Some time has passed since you moved into your new castle headquarters. How have you been settling in?
Avon has been assisting with the cleaning up of the castle and reading the books in his spare time.
Okay. In the library mainly?
Yep.
Very good. And what has Dixon been up to?
Dixon has chosen a bedroom and a study as
Okay.
sort of his places of sort of hangout. Although he also spends time just, in whatever the main common room area is. He has made it reasonably tidy and organized in such a way that it might give the impression of a military background. Although he doesn't seem to act too much like that normally, but the room is extremely well tended. On the wall, he has a U.S. Union cavalry hat, and the priest may have noticed a cavalry uniform hanging in the closet, but it's sort of hidden. Not like super hidden, but it's not like on display in any way. He's been drinking a bit, not excessively, and smoking a bit. He's done some cleaning in the general house and made himself useful. He hasn't just been sitting around and letting the cleaner do it all.
Elvon, the steward Elgot Frisk, has come to find you in the library, presumably, as that is where he notes that you have been spending a lot of your time. And he lets you know that during his cleaning and maintenance of the castle, he found a room that he believes you will be interested in. And he seems kind of a little unsure every time he speaks to you of how to address you. So there's always a moment of awkwardness, and he says, Father, sir, if you would follow me.
Afternoon, and he will get up and start following. You do not need to be so formal.
And he frowns slightly and says, You are my employer, sir. He leads you to a heavy wooden door in the main entry hall, one that had previously been unopenable. He pulls it open with some exertion, and as the door creaks open, you can see into the room he has discovered, a small chapel. It is definitely in need of cleaning. A thick layer of dust rests on every surface. An alcove at the far end of the room holds a small altar and a window, and wooden benches are lined up facing them. Now, it is up to you. This is not something that you need to do right now. I'm not going to say get out some construction equipment and make me some rolls to fix up this chapel, but you may sort of decide how you want this to be fixed up, and within reason, the steward will take care of that for you. So, is there anything specific you would like there to be in the chapel?
Um, Not off the top of my head. I will do a little bit of research.
Fair enough. So, you now know that the chapel exists, and this is something you're going to be able to direct the decoration slash maintenance of. Currently, it is still usable. It is pretty dusty, but it's not in complete disrepair. But it is a space that is going to be sort of your domain, so it is up to you to do with it what you will. And sometime after that discovery, two letters arrive. One addressed to Alvon in particular, and one addressed simply to the society. So, as I'm assuming Alvon will open the one to him, I will send that to him, and I will send the other one to Dixon.
And Dix will pick up his glass of scotch, and as he's walking through the manor reading the letter. He will walk into a room he hasn't been in before,
Mm.
and he will look around the chapel and start to think, I don't remember being in here before. Father, am I allowed to drink in here? Is there anything against drinking scotch in a chapel? By the blank look upon your face, I see I have confused you, sir. I did indeed receive a letter.
I did as well.
It did, in fact, raise some questions that I had.
And those would be?
Well, there is a level of flattery involved in this. Dear esteemed colleagues of the Society, that's us. I trust that this letter finds you well and that your pursuits in unraveling the mysteries of our world continue to be both thrilling and rewarding. I'm not so sure on the rewarding part. Although I guess we did get this house. It is with sincere gratitude that I thank you with your assistance in dealing with the events at the Witch Cat Inn. Your swift action and keen insights are truly commendable. As individuals bound by a unique ability and common interest, it is only natural that our paths should intersect from time to time. In light of our recent collaboration, I believe it would be mutually beneficial for us to maintain an open line of communication. After all, in the pursuit of enlightenment, one often finds strength in unity. Please consider this correspondence an invitation to foster a closer connection between our respective endeavors. Should you ever find yourselves in need of assistance or guidance, know that I am at your disposal. Together we may uncover truths that have long eluded us and delve deeper into the realms of the enigmatic. In closing, I eagerly anticipate the prospect of future collaborations and the opportunity to further our acquaintance. May our shared journey through the mysteries of existence be both enlightening and fulfilling. With warm regards, Olas Clint. Now, I feel that this was written very much like a Confederate statesman. And I also don't trust Mr. Clint.
Why ever not?
In part, we did a job for him. I do not believe we were paid by him. Did Mr. Clint also send you a letter and a level of redundancy?
Well, no. A former friend requested my presence.
As when you say former, as in former, before, as in not now, not present, not in the present. It is before the present that this was a friend. Now that the former friend is now just a present acquaintance.
The mentor of my associate, I suppose I should call him, was found murdered. They suspect suicide, but he is very convinced something else was at foot. He thinks supernatural. And he supposes that the answers lie at Wrecker Isle.
Now, when you say this mentor of your former friend, was he in the same kind of profession as you now find yourself?
You're asking if they are part of the church? Yes.
You seem to be a rather open-minded individual in that we deal with the occult, the things that move in the night, and so forth. Is that common among your members?
I believe so. I mean, I believe most people are also believers, for it is a known phenomenon.
Well, that is true, sir. I just was not sure if I was just not sure if elements of your particular profession tended to be a little bit more straight lined on their way of thinking.
It depends on the person.
That makes a certain amount of sense, sir. I can understand where you're coming from.
Some believe they are demons or merely servants of demons.
So, how do they view you, sir? Are you putting wrongs to right? Or do they see you as wasting your time on frivolities?
I cannot say how they feel about me. It's not a very open topic.
I see.
I like to believe I am helping them rest.
And where did this former associate, now acquaintance, wish to meet?
He would like to meet us in Fellback. It's a small fishing town.
Is that where the mentor met his unfortunate demise, or is that where your former friend, now associate, is currently calling his residence?
Well, it's neither. He would like us to meet there so we can reach Wrecker Isles, which he believes will hold the answers.
The answers to the suicide that's not suicide.
He believes there was foul play, whether that be supernatural or not. But he is leaning towards the supernatural.
Very well. I will accompany you if you so require it. And I just would like to point out that you very nearly became your Call of Cthulhu character just then.
There was
Yes.
a bit of an accent, but I wasn't going to mention it.
Well,
All
now
right.
I'm hearing Southern, so
Yeah, I know. It's my fault.
You
everything's
have
always your fault.
decided to go. Before you do so, is there anything you want to look up? So you do have a library, and you will have the potential. There is basically a preparation phase at the beginning of every adventure that you have a couple things you can do. One is you can research stuff in your library, and two is you can create an advantage for yourself. So, an advantage, you get one per mystery, and you declare, sort of either before leaving or on the journey, how you are creating this advantage. It can be something like you're practicing with your weapon, and then later on you'd use it in a weapon related thing, or you're getting to know your party member better, and then later you'd use it in like a cooperation thing. Basically, an advantage you can call on later to get 2 bonus die on a skill check. But you only get one per adventure. You have to say you're using it before you roll, or you can use it when you're pushing, but you can't roll and then say, like, oh, I want to add 2 extra dice to that because I failed. Um, Although you can push and then say, I want to add 2 extra dice to my roll to push. So, does anybody want to look anything up? And
Yes,
or does anybody want to create an advantage for themselves?
would like to look something up.
All right, what would you like to look up?
Wrecker Island.
Okay, make me a learning roll.
I would also like to research something.
All right, what would you like to research?
Uh, any, I don't know if there's like a book about Vaesen, but any Vaesen that are related to suicide in some sort of way.
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Okay,
Clever.
it is.
Clever idea. I'm
Yes,
impressed
it
by.
is. I'm gonna have to look. So, if you want to give me a roll, for the research bit, I will then look for information to answer you.
Says
You search through all the books you can find that describe different kinds of Vaesen. You find a lot of information, but you're not able to find in your search anything really tying to suicide.
And to create an advantage, could I pray for protection?
Um, I will say yes, you could spend time in like spiritual preparation or whatever. What would you use it for later? Because you have to sort of decide ahead of time. It can't just apply to any kind of a check, it has to be for something specific.
I was thinking fear, a fear check.
Okay, cool. I like it. Go for it. So make a note that that is your advantage and describe how you are gaining this.
He will light some of the candles in the chapel,
Mhm.
clean it up a little bit, and make a prayer for protection from evil spirits and the likes.
And does Dixon want to prepare any kind of advantage?
Right. So while he's been researching and maybe some time helping in the chapel before they leave, cleaning it has strengthened their bond.
The journey to Fjellbacka takes days, traveling first by carriage, then by boat, then carriage again. Odd question. Has anyone been paying any particular attention to, like, the weather, anything natural, anything like that? Any interests here? Any astronomers, perhaps?
Dixon would have been paying attention to the journey. Part of why he became an adventurer was partly because of enjoying travel. So the journey itself, he's entirely capable of brooding, but if he doesn't have reasons to be brooding, he's more attentive to. If he's brooding, he would probably be hunched and just sort of looking at the floor, sort of thing. But as that's not the case, he probably would be looking outside. Would he be consciously thinking about those elements? No, but he would
Okay.
be. But he would be looking outside a lot, trying to see the land, the places, the people.
All right. And during the day, absolutely, you can see from your carriage or boat as the landscape goes by, you're able to see it's fairly kind of rocky coastline, not very forested or anything. You do note that at night it's a little trickier to see, but not because of anything mystical. You simply notice that you are approaching a new moon, so there is less moonlight because the new moon's when you can't see it. You're not there yet, but the moon's getting smaller. So, not much moonlight. And eventually, you reach your destination, the small fishing village. The breeze off the water is a welcome respite from the summer heat, and looking out across the sea, you can see the shapes of multiple islands. Down by one of the docks, you spot a figure that looks a bit out of place amongst the many sailors and dock workers, a stern looking young man in a black cassock.
Alvon will approach him.
And he will look up at you, and he doesn't smile or anything. He has a very austere sort of attitude, but he looks at you with recognition, and then he turns to Dixon, who he does not know, looks back to Alvon, and says, "You brought a friend?"
You did not say I couldn't.
"I did not mean you couldn't. I simply did not know you would." "How have you been?"
Fine. Not much has changed.
"I see. I wish that I could say the same."
Yes, the news is not happy. He is a He was a great man.
Yes, I looked up to him. I I am very unclear on why everyone is so ready to dismiss it as a suicide.
I could not tell you, but if there is something else at play, we will find it.
Good. Well, better not to waste any time. And he sort of beckons you down to the dock and points at a small fishing boat. I have arranged passage for us to, and he grimaces, Wrecker Isle. Not a place that I would go were it not, well, the circumstances demand. If you have any questions, I will answer them on the journey, but I am anxious to be going.
I believe me and my companion are ready as well.
Dixon nods.
And he nods and he has a brief conversation with the man you presume to be the owner of the boat you will be using to get to the island, and you are welcomed on board. The captain says it'll take about an hour to reach the island. It doesn't seem that far looking at it, but he explains that the time isn't necessarily just to do with how far it is to the island, but you can see even from here there are boats just crowded around it. It seems though as though it is difficult to actually get to the island because there's just so many people there.
Is it heron season, Captain?
He looks at you with a bit of a smile and he says, "Well, it is a bit of a funny thing. That question would have meant something, I suppose, 30 years ago, but well, it's almost always herring season now."
I see.
And you begin your journey. And Oscar seems not anxious exactly. He seems agitated. You not only get the sense, he flat out said he doesn't want to go to this place, except that he does want to find out what happened to the vicar. He is just very anxious for this all to be done, really. You get the sense. And he will look at the two of you and say, "So, what do you need to know? I can tell you everything that I know."
Well, it would be remiss of me, sir, if I did not at least properly make your acquaintance. My
Yes,
name is Dixon
yes, of course.
Hardy. I am a investigator, and I am a acquaintance of the good father here.
Uh, he looks sort of surprised for a second and then says, "Yes, yes, of course. My apologies. I had forgotten the pleasantries in my haste. I am Oscar Utgren, an acquaintance of your friend, and well, he gestures at his clothing. I am sure you can tell what it is that I do."
And while the Swedish is entirely passable, it might be difficult not to notice a slight accent.
Is he okay?
No,
Yes,
he's not saying he's not saying that to him.
I realized that wasn't in an accent, but for a minute I was like, wait, is he just saying, yeah, I'm pretty good at Swedish, but you might notice I
No,
have an
no.
accent? That would be strange. Um,
Um, I could not help but notice your reluctance to wish to go to Wrecker Island, and while the name itself has some ominous connotations when taken in English, it probably does not mean the same in your homeland. As all I could find was it was a place that is quite popular with fishermen and herring. You seem to not be the sort to be afraid of fishermen or herring, so there is some other reason that you are reluctant to wish to set foot upon its shores.
He grimaces and says, Wrecker Island is a den of vice and sin.
Figuratively or metaphorically? I believe fishermen can sometimes be a bit of a rambunctious lot and have some rather large appetites due to the difficulty that they exist with living.
He sighs and says, I take it you have not heard of the Herring Baron nor the godmother of Wrecker Isle.
If not, sir. I have been in your country for several years, but I am still essentially a foreigner.
This area, well, before 30 years ago, it was rather hard to make a living. People were dependent on the fish, and the fish, well, they were not always here. There is a family, a local family, the Amundsons. They were a poor fishing family before the herring returned. There are rumors that they made their living through wrecking. Then the patriarch of the family died under rather dubious circumstances. Now, the rumors there say that his youngest son beat him to death, although that is, of course, speculation. But around 30 years ago, the herring returned, and ever since, they seem to have stayed. The mother of the family, Abella, bought Wrecker Isle and opened an inn. Business has been good. The amount of liquor moving through is remarkable. Now, she and her youngest son basically have rule of the place, and it is not a godly place.
How does it fit into the not suicide idea that you possess, sir?
My mentor, the vicar, he had hope that he could redeem them, I suppose. He would travel to the island in the hopes of convincing Zacharias, the youngest son. He is known as the Herring Baron because he runs the herring saltery on the island and has made the family rather wealthy. The vicar thought that if he could convert Zacharias, the issue would resolve itself. There would be no more debauchery or what have you on the island.
I do not mean to speak ill of the dead or upon the efforts of your church, but as learned men, you surely know that rambunctious behavior goes back to the birth of humanity. Men, fishermen, and the like, have the Roman Empire were, in some ways, not that undifferent from those today. Why would their behavior be so different now?
While mankind is burdened by original sin, they may rise above such base behavior. They need not be beholden to it.
And he thought he could succeed at this task.
Yes, he was persistent. They had thrown him out more than once, and yet he continued.
I do not mean this to be an insulting question, sir, but it is my job to ask those things that come to mind. Do you believe that he was following his divine calling, or merely, in the end, hubris?
He pauses and considers and says, "Whose perspective am I meant to answer the question from? From his or from mine? Yes, he was doing God's work. From yours, perhaps, or that of others. I'm sure it would seem hubris."
Well, I'm making no judgment at this time, sir. I am interested in your honest perspective.
I believe he was doing what he thought was right. He always did. Now, he brought with him a revolver. The last time he left for Wrecker Isle, he had been threatened on his previous visit, and he wished to bring some means of defense. Now, the coroner says that his death was caused by a gunshot to the head at a close range, presumably from his own weapon, although the weapon has not been recovered.
And Dixon looks at the two priests. Such a thing is not uncommon for men like myself, as in being armed. I do not know of any priests before that would have carried a firearm.
He did not usually.
Would it not go against "Thou shalt not kill"? And if any of those threatening individuals, if they were aware of that, the firearm itself would have been of little use.
I do not believe he would have killed anyone. It was meant more as a warning, I believe.
Did he go dressed as yourself, sir?
Yes,
So they were aware that he was a man of God.
certainly.
He did very little to hide that fact.
Albon is correct. He went a-preaching.
I just wanted to be clear on that point, that's all. So, how do you wish to go about this investigation? We have no legal authority to demand answers from anyone.
I rather thought the investigation was your domain. That is why I requested.
I will do my best, sir. I'm just pointing out that we have no legal authority. If they don't wish to give us an interview, we won't necessarily be able to force that issue.
Whether or not the family will speak, there are plenty of others on the island. I know someone there.
And who might they be?
A friend from my childhood.
Are they in the order that you are involved in any way, the church, or?
She is certainly not a priest, no.
Oh, no, but don't you have nuns and the like?
She is not a member of the church at all.
I know who he's talking about.
You may have heard him mention her before. She is a woman around his age, and he is, I mean, you may not know his exact age, but he seems to be in his 20s. He's younger than the two of you. He probably has mentioned her. There was a girl that he grew up in the same town as who he was very attached to before he took up the priest's cassock and therefore renounced such things, but he he has expressed concern for her in the past as she has taken a job on Wrecker Isle.
And Dixon looks at Alvon and raises an eyebrow, which Alvon's been around him long enough to realize that that's him asking, is this legit?
You do remember you renounced those feelings.
Yes, that does not mean, however, that I no longer know her.
You're not a very good liar.
He looks at you with. He doesn't seem to know what of his behavior you are thinking is suspicious. That doesn't mean you're wrong. He just seems a little taken aback. Elvon, I. It is your investigation as I see it. If you do not wish to speak to someone whom I have a prior connection to and could provide information, then that is your prerogative.
I've known you for years. I am just giving you a hard time.
She is the only person on the island I know personally. Others I know of. Zacharias, the one who runs the island, basically. He's the youngest child of Abella. Well, she technically owns the island. The inhabitants call her the godmother. And three older sons, older brothers to Zacharias, although from what I hear, one of them has not been seen for weeks, but the other two should still be present as well. Pete, Paul, and Pace were the older brothers. I am not quite sure which was gone, but
I think she will be a decent place to start.
and he grimaces again. He has been doing that a lot. He doesn't really like much about this place and says, "She works in the inn. We can head there first." And before you notice visually that you are approaching Wrecker Isle, you smell it. The sea breeze begins to mingle with the stronger scents of herring and train oil. Now, you know train oil to be nothing actually to do with trains. It is, for some reason, what oil made from whales or fish is called. And as you draw nearer, you pass by countless other boats, most much bigger than the small fishing boat you are on. As you draw closer, Oscar points out three buildings on the island. The large yellow building is the herring warehouse, and the building he's gesturing at is massive. It seems very large for the size of the island itself. Next to it is the Amundsen house, and a bit further back is the inn. And it takes some time. It's similar to, in today's terms, waiting for a parking spot in a very crowded parking lot. But eventually, the captain who agreed to bring you here is able to find a berth, and you can finally set foot on Wrecker Isle.
I will wait for Oscar to lead the way to the inn.
All right. Does Alvon agree that this is the best course of action?
Yep, I was going to say I believe the inn is a good place to start,
All
so.
right, we are headed to the inn, which means you are not the only ones headed to the inn. In fact, there is quite a crowd, and as you make your way through throngs of sailors and dock workers, you get a better view of the building itself. It looks sturdy and is 3 stories tall. As you enter, Oscar coughs as you hit a cloud of tobacco smoke, drawing glares from sailors who sit playing cards. Waitresses, who seem rather lightly dressed, bring food and drink to the different tables. An old woman sits in one corner, keeping a close eye on what is happening and tightly gripping a shotgun.
I would like to seek a place to sit.
All right, and you're able to find a table. All the tables seem almost like folding tables, like they're not sturdy, they're just kind of thrown haphazardly around the room, trying to get in as many people as they possibly can. And as you seat yourselves, a waitress pretty quickly comes over to you and asks if you want any food or drink.
Yvonne would order food and drink.
We've got herring, most ways you can think of. Some bread. Aquavit is the main drink people order, and that's a fairly strong liquor. But if you don't like hard liquor, we do have some beer.
Would like some bread and a beer, if possible.
She nods and looks at the 2 priests a little skeptically, perhaps.
I'll have the same.
Yes. No fish?
No, thank you, ma'am.
And Oscar declines the offer of a drink, but agrees to have. There's sort of a fish sandwich that many of the people seem to be eating, and seems willing to try one of those. So that is what he asks for. Apparently,
That
much
does
to
not sound
Dixon's
appealing.
horror.
Yeah, that does not sound appealing.
Um. Well, this one wouldn't be no. There are nice fish sandwiches that exist in the world, but these look rather. But anyway, to take maybe a little longer than you'd expect from an inn, but this place is packed full, so you get the sense that they are very busy. Your food and drinks are brought and placed before you, and the waitress hurries off elsewhere. Well, what would people like to do? You now sit with food and drink, aside from Oscar, who did not get a drink.
You mentioned she worked here?
You have noticed since you entered the inn, he's been sort of glancing around, seeming to look for someone. And eventually, he seems to have found who he was looking for. He points over to a waitress who is bringing food to another table and says, that would be her. And the woman who he has said is named Justinia seems to be around the same age as him. She's got. Oh, wait, I forgot to post pictures of people. I can do that. But she seems to be around the same age as him. She's got long brown hair, which is sort of done up in a braided bun, and she is kind of laughing with the sailors. She seems to be giving them a hard time. Some of the times, if they sort of make a joke with her, she'll make one right back. She seems very comfortable working here. That's Oscar. This is Justinia. The woman who's over in the corner with the shotgun looks like this. And he basically tries to catch her attention, and after some time, he's able to do so. She looks surprised to see him. Not unhappy, but perhaps a little bit concerned. Like, why are you here? She presumably knows how he feels about the place. So after she manages to deal with a couple other tables, makes her way over to yours. And she says, Oscar, uh, what a pleasant surprise. And he seems a little unclear on what to say and says, Look, these are my friends. They have some questions if you don't mind. And she looks at the two of you curiously.
I take it you're Justina?
Justinia. Yes, yes, sir.
Justinia?
Or father.
Your friend talks quite a lot about you.
Oh, does he now? And she looks at him with sort of a grin. Oscar, I thought you'd given up on trying to get me to leave. You know I'm not going back to Fjallbacka. I'm not gonna stay here either. That's... No, I wanna... Just saving up money till I can go somewhere more interesting. Fjallbacka's small and boring.
Well, we were actually here for a different purpose.
Ah, well, that's a relief anyway.
I am sure you might have heard of the vicar who has come here many times.
Oh, heard of? Yes, heard from many times. My goodness, the speeches we've heard.
He was quite the vocal man
Hmm.
and very persistent.
Yes, I'm surprised he's not come around for, well, I'd say it's been about a month now.
Well, that brings us to the topic. He was found dead.
Oh, oh, ah, I'm, I'm sorry. Not, I didn't mean to speak ill of the dead or anything.
It's fine. It's best we remember him.
Hmm. I'm sure we shall.
He was quite the unforgettable character.
Yes. Sorry. Oscar said you had questions? It's about the vicar?
Yes, do you know any enemies or people he upset while he was here?
She looks... Hmm. A look crosses her face that you would best describe as caution, perhaps, and she seems to sort of be trying to, without turning her head, see around the room to see if anyone else is perhaps in a spot they could be overhearing. And if you wish her to say anything, I need you to make me a manipulation check. Not, again, manipulation not meaning being manipulative in this sense, but it's how you convince somebody in this game.
7 dice and 1 success.
That's all you need, so that's fine. She sort of cautiously looks around and then a bit quieter says, Well, it's not exactly a secret or anything, but he really didn't get on with any of the Amundsons, and, well, about a month ago, he had a really loud argument with Abella and Zacharias, and then Pete and Pace threw him out, but he said he'd be back, and I guess he never was.
Do you remember what the argument was about?
Oh, the usual fire and brimstone and uh, hellfire and more brimstone and it's a den of drinking and sin and hmm. It was sort of odd though. Well, really, that's the thing. I thought I heard him again later. Maybe well, he had the argument with them that evening. But then later at night, I woke up and I could hear another argument. Um, not in the inn. Somewhere else on the island, over towards the warehouse, maybe. But one of the voices sounded a bit like the vicar. I didn't really make a note of it because, well, loud arguments aren't really that uncommon here, even in the middle of the night. The inn never really closes, and, well, we go through quite a lot of liquor. So,
I appreciate you telling us that.
uh, yes. And is there anything else I can help? And she gets cut off by a hand on her shoulder. And standing behind her, there is now a short, very angry looking old woman holding a shotgun. And she says, Justinia, dear, please return to your duties? You've bothered the gentleman quite enough, I think. And Justinia nods and hurries off elsewhere. My apologies, sirs. I trust everything is well.
Yes, and she was no bother.
Hmm, I'm sure. And the woman heads back to her seat in the corner where she seems to overlook the whole inn.
I wouldn't want to meet her in a dark alley.
You don't trust an angry old lady with a shotgun?
Do you?
Oscar says, if you weren't already aware, that is a Bella, who owns, well, this place and I suppose the entire island.
She is rather relaxed for having two priests on her island.
Well, we're not really kicking up a fuss at the moment, I expect. Were we to, things would be different.
And she is holding a scattergun.
Well, Justinia said that the vicar was last here a month ago, which, well, that was when he last set out for the island, and it was after that that his body washed up on shore.
So that does work in on your timeline?
Yes. Wish she wouldn't work here.
Well, I'm sure she would take on some other duties in a different location if she could get by.
She could get by somewhere else. She just doesn't want to.
Why?
You heard her. She says Fialbaka's dull.
That why you became a priest?
Because Fialbaka's dull?
No. Because while she is clearly happy to have you as a friend, your temperament, and I mean no insult when I say this, sir, is that she sees you a little bit like she does the mainland.
Um, for a moment, his face He looks a bit like a kicked puppy. And then he tries to recover. And he says, I became a priest because I was called by God.
Of course.
You always have a way with words, don't you?
Well, I think it's sometimes better just to go straight in, like a bull. Sometimes there's too much waffing around. Doesn't get you anywhere.
And as you are having this discussion, two other individuals approach your table. They are. It is hard to describe them. They have smiles on their faces, but they manage to look alarming rather than friendly. They are two men you would guess maybe in their 50s, rather heavy set, and as they give these unsettling grins, you are able to see that they have very poorly maintained teeth, which doesn't really help their image much. But these two alarming looking characters approach your table with what you get the sense they think are genuine friendly smiles. And the one on the left says, Why, hello there, sirs. I'm Pete, and this is Pace. And he gestures to who you take to be his brother, or if not, there's a remarkable coincidence somewhere. And the one he called Pace nods and says, Pace. Yeah. And Pete continues, We should ask you if you would come and have dinner with our family tonight. And they both look at you.
The priest will glance over to the detective.
Well, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. I would just like a little bit more information if you don't mind. To which family would we be dining with?
They look at you confused and say, Our family, we told you we're brothers of Zacharias.
Yeah, that is true, but I have never met Zacharias.
But you should know who he is.
Do you want to go to dinner, sir?
He will look to Oscar to see his face.
Oscar is looking a bit confused, but then the two kind of see you looking at him and interject, no, he can't come. And the other one goes, No, he can't. He can't come. He's not invited.
Why would that be? What infringement has this individually gentleman done to warrant such scorn, sir?
Zacharias says he can't come. And Oscar looks at the two of you and says, If you wish to go, if you think you could learn anything, then I would simply advise caution.
And I do not see why we shouldn't join you.
They look at each other. They look back at you and say, Good. Then you can come to our house in 1 hour. Yes.
We will be there.
And they both nod and head off, and you see them saying something to Abella, the woman in the corner with the shotgun. And then they leave the inn. And is there anything you would like to do in the next hour, or are you simply wasting away time till you go for dinner? As you sit and sort of observe, a man not so much walks as stumbles his way over to your table. You get the sense he has been partaking in probably not even the beer, but the aquavit, which you've heard is fairly strong. And he seems a little bit confused upon seeing you, but he stops at your table and he's sort of swaying back and forth in front of you. And then he jabs his finger towards your face and says, "You, you two, three, you three, leave. You should leave
We will be, sir. We are not planning on making Wrecker Island our home.
now. You should leave now."
And why would that be?
The sea, the sea, it gives and it takes. The sea, it takes. It's almost a new moon.
I did indeed notice that, sir, on our journey in. While the moon is involved in many ideas of astronomy and tides and so on, it seems to hold some particular importance to you.
He looks at you. He is out of it. You get the sense that he very truly believes that you should leave as soon as possible. This is not simply drunken ramblings. However, he's also too intoxicated to carry on a cohesive conversation. So you're unlikely to get much more, but he just kind of stares at you and repeats himself. You should leave. You're not the, the sea it takes. And he sways on the spot for a moment and then sort of drifts away, listing heavily in one direction, but uh others in the inn seem to know him and you don't get the sense that he's going to like just wander out into the night and pass out somewhere. Presumably someone will make sure he gets somewhere else, but he's not got much more to say. At least until he's sober. And Oscar looks and says, "Oh, I've never seen him quite that upset.
An interesting fella, to be sure.
Yes, he has a reputation for being a bit strange, but even so, that was unusual. He doesn't live in Fjallbacka or on Wrecker Isle. He lives by himself on a different island. Keeps to himself.
Do you know why?
No? I suppose you could ask him in the morning. He might know himself then."
I guess all we can do is kill time.
All right.
I was thinking go to dinner. What about you?
I'm agreeable to that idea, sir.
You make your way out of the inn to the Amundsen residence, which is a two-story building and seems to be much better made than any of the other buildings you have seen on the island. You are shown in by a maid who introduces herself as Lura and leads you to a dining room. Seated already, you see Abella, the rather constantly annoyed looking old woman, Pete and Pace, the two brothers, and a man who you assume to be Zacharias Amundsen. He is a handsome man in his 40s with dark eyes, thick dark hair, and a meticulously waxed mustache. And you are greeted by him mainly. The others don't really seem to have much to say, but he will say, "Ah, our guests, welcome. Please be seated."
And Dixon will do so.
Elvon will do the same.
All right, and I'm sure Dixon will be thrilled that most of the food on the table seems to be herring in one form or another. There is a lot of fish on the table. There is also an awful lot of alcohol. The food is passed around. You may take what you wish or not take what you wish. No one seems to be.
He will try to find something to be polite.
All right, all right. And as you sit and eat or don't, you do note that Abella, Pete, and Pace just sort of watch you. Abella seems to more glare, but Zacharias is gregarious, seems to have a lot to say. Definitely the most friendly seeming of any of the family, and he will say, "So, well, I am, of course, aware of the friend you came to our island with. We've had dealings with him before. I hope you are not offended that I didn't extend the invitation to him, but, well, we've had dealings with him before. But you two, you are newcomers. I am curious. What brings you here?"
Well, we seek answers, and this place might hold them.
Answers? Well, if your questions relate to fish in any way, then I'm sure we could be a great deal of help. Otherwise, well, there's not much to Wrecker Isle, really. It's sort of an in-between spot for the most part. Sailors stop by. And of course, we process lots of herring in our warehouse, but other than that, it's fish and oil and liquor here mainly. Not to complain, it's done rather well for us, as I'm sure you can see. And he gestures around, and inside this house, it is very fancy. Much more so than the inn, which, while functional, seemed to just sort of be made to maximize space, get as many people packed in as possible. This house is nice. So, what answers can we help you find?
I am sure you are aware, sir, of the rather annoying individual that used to come and rather loudly preach.
Oh, your friend back at the inn. Yes, that's why he wasn't invited.
No, sir, his mentor.
And who would that be?
His name was Carl. You would have met him.
I am afraid I don't know who you mean. Well, your friend back at the inn there, at Oscar or whatever his name was. Well, he's not been by in ages, but he does stop in every once in a while. He's rather obsessed with one of the girls who works in the inn. You may have noticed. Tries to convince her to leave. Hasn't worked yet. Odd for a priest, I always thought. But no, sorry, what did you say? Carl? Doesn't ring a bell.
He came around to try to convert the people of the island.
Oh, did he?
I am surprised you haven't heard. He was quite the loudmouth.
Well,
He was not very subtle.
work does keep me very busy, but what what to do with him?
He went missing.
Oh, I am sorry to hear that. You are looking for him, I suppose.
The church is interested in events that led to his disappearance.
Oh, I'm sure they would be.
It appeared to have led to Wrecker Island. It was meant to be an area that he preached at and had been thrown out of the inn a couple of times from what they had said.
If he caused trouble there, well, that is very likely. The island, well, some of the clientele can be a bit uncouth, and so if anyone kicks up a fuss, my brothers here tend to evict them, shall we say. So, yes, if he was making a nuisance of himself, that is very possible.
Oh, I'm sure he would be remembered. He was very much a priest. Uh, Not something you get that common here, I imagine.
We seem to have plenty.
I don't think anything gets past Abella.
She kind of glares at you. She hasn't said a single word to you since you've come in here, but you think every once in a while she's sort of been muttering something under her breath?
Now, what you do at your inn is entirely your concern, and it is absolutely not ours. We are only interested in what happened to the priest.
Well, you're more than welcome to ask around if anyone knows anything. Well, I cannot speak for the sailors, of course. They will do what they will do, but I suspect anyone who works at the inn would tell you what they know.
We will do our best not to cause any disruption to your enterprises. That's not the purpose of why we're here.
Of course, very appreciated.
When was the last time you saw Oscar?
Oscar, the lovesick one. He hasn't been around for 3 months, perhaps, till, well, I suppose today. And now, it is clear to me why you, sir, and he gestures to Alban, would come to a cystate fellow man of the cloth. But you, uh, American? Uh, what brings you to our island?
Oh, I've been friends with the father here for some time, and he requested some help.
Hmm.
While it is a very profitable business island, it sometimes has the reputation on the mainland as not the most wholesome of places for a father to be.
That is true. That is true.
My profession is investigator, and as the church was looking for someone to look into this matter, it was fortuitous that we were together.
I am sure that will be of great help to you in your search for Earl, was it?
Carl, sir.
Ah, Carl. All right, make me a roll to look for anything suspicious.
Super, super good roll. As in 0.
2 successes.
Okay, cool. They will continue to, well, most of them sit in silence and eat. Every once in a while, Abella seems to mutter something angrily to herself. You can't quite catch it. Um, the the brothers just eat a lot and drink a lot, but don't really say anything. Zacharias continues chatting with you throughout the meal. He has a lot of stories to tell. He seems very outgoing, especially in comparison to the rest of the family at the table. But he seems determined to entertain, and so he will chat happily with you. He asks questions for sure. He's curious, especially about Dixon being from America. He's got some questions about the country and all that, and why you came to Sweden, and how you like Sweden, and what's different between America. All all the fun sort of things people ask you at dinner parties when you don't know them very well. And the dinner will continue. And it will continue until it ends, unless there is anything anyone else would like to ask or do. And as the dinner winds down, you've been asked a couple more times if you're sure you don't want any more. The herring's really quite good. But after politely refusing, Zacharias will say, "Well, it has been splendid. Thank you for indulging my invitation, which I'm sure was, well, may have seemed to come out of nowhere. We will, of course, put you up at the inn. There are plenty of rooms there. We can arrange for your friend to stay as well, I suppose, if he will not bother anyone, specifically, not my waitress. Uh, but yes, been lovely. Why don't you head off, get some rest? You can look for whoever he was tomorrow."
Appreciate your hospitality, sir.
Of course. And you can head back to the inn? Are you heading back to the inn?
I certainly am.
Okay. And is there anything anybody wants to do before going to sleep for the night? It is late. It is fully dark outside, although the inn does not seem to ever close. And Justinia did mention that because sailors come in at sort of all hours, it seems that it is always open. It seems like a fairly loud place. Hopefully, the rooms are fairly soundproof. But if you wish to do anything, you may. If you wish to go to bed, you may do that too.
I'm fine for just going to bed.
He will say, though, to the father, before returning to Oscar, I do feel, sir, that at least one of the parties is lying to us.
But which one?
Well, in all honesty, it could well be both at this time. If the vicar is telling the truth, there's no way that they would be unfamiliar with Vicar Carl. If Oscar's not being completely honest with his motivations and the turn of events, then there could well be something else being trod underfoot. There could also be something else going on completely unrelated to the missing vicar as it stands. Zacharias was not cut, I believe, from the same cloth as the rest of that family. I am sure that you noticed the unmistakable overabundance of perfume that the man was wearing.
And as he mentions it, you realize that yes, there was a strong perfume scent in the room while you were having dinner, even stronger than the scent of all the fish, which is saying something.
Now, I could put it down to when you're surrounded by that much fish, you could well want to have other smells. It would be completely understandable and justifiable. However, That individual was wearing more perfume than the stage girls that I had seen. His hair and eye color had no matching connection to anyone else in that room, nor did his facial features. There is a certain scary resemblance between the mother and the two brothers, Pete and Pace. Zacharias is a whole different kettle of fish, if you will pardon the pun. I have no idea yet on what to make of that, other than I find it strange.
Well, I mean, there's the possibility he is adopted.
I would put that as the most likely source before going into anything more ridiculous. Unfortunately, in our line of work, ridiculous is sometimes our middle name. I don't know what to make of your former friend. I think he is still pining hard for the miss at the tavern. He may not be entirely truthful with his motivations with you.
He is a hard one to figure out.
Now, I'm not saying at this point that we should be looking on him as a murder suspect or anything so severe. I'm just saying I don't know how much that he's saying that we can take at face value.
And as you enter the inn, you see Oscar himself sitting at the same table. His fish sandwich, which was there hours previous, is largely untouched.
Don't blame him.
He looks up and sees you entering and sort of looks questioningly at you.
Well, that was an interesting evening. Zacharias is quite a generous and overwhelming host.
Generous does not sound accurate. Overwhelming, I can see. Did you learn anything?
He's generous when he wants to be, when he wants to get the lay of the land, much as we were trying to do.
Hmm. I suppose that is not shocking. But did you learn anything?
He is a shrewd negotiator. They did not remember your mentor. They did, however, remember you.
That is preposterous. Justinia said while you were here that she observed Zacharias arguing with the vicar.
Yes, I did not put any stock in that. I did say to them that I'm sure they would remember a priest, because it's not the same as just anyone walking through the door.
If they're denying that they recall his presence, that is simply absurd and provably false. I do not understand what the point of such a denial would be.
Well, in my experience, the innocent lie because they don't want to get caught of something they didn't do, and the guilty lie because they've got absolutely no other recourse. The trick is finding out which is which. There is certainly more going on than meets the eye with that family. There is no doubt of that.
I can.
Nor do we trust them.
Good. For I can assure you that none of them are innocent.
But are they guilty of murder or of involvement in murder? That's the real question. Whether they're guilty of other things may not be necessarily of concern to us. He likes to play his cards close to his chest. They underestimate people just a little.
Well, that sounds like a good thing.
It can be. But like you said, caution is important.
Well, I will admit I was slightly nervous. Perhaps the two of you would simply never return, but it seems at least those fears were unfounded.
I would not say that an accident could not have tried to have been arranged, but he's a shrewd negotiator. One missing priest can be explained. Multiple? People start asking a lot of awkward questions, questions that they would not want answered. He was definitely trying to understand if we were any sort of threat. Definitely, he thinks he's in a higher steed than we are. But he did tip his hand just a little when they denied knowing or ever have hearing of Carl. It would have been, I would have thought, much more better for them to have embraced that a great deal more. To the furthest extent, oh yes, we knew well of him. He came here often. We had to throw him out several times. By, as you said, lying so obviously. I think was a mistake for them. But the question still remains. Is that because they're up to some underhanded trickery with their fishing ventures, or they were involved in the murder?
Well, I suppose that is what I asked you here to discover.
And that is indeed what we are trying to do, sir.
Very good. Do you think there is anything else to discover tonight? If not, I would like to retire.
Do not think there is. I think we have met every drunkard who was willing to open their mouth with vague warnings, every strange family outings that we could have been involved with, and every unrequited love that we could possibly have found on one evening. It's been a very busy day, sir.
He looks at you as you say that, clearly is unsure of how to respond, and will sort of hastily stand from the table and say, very well, I will see you in the morning. I was informed that there are rooms. Good night. And he will leave. Are the two of you going to go sleep?
Yes.
Great. Both of you?
Me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, I don't know how long it takes the two of you to fall asleep or how easy it is. It might be rather difficult. Justinia was not lying. The place never seems to sleep, really, because there's always someone awake and always noise somewhere. But you do eventually find sleep. And really, it's not a restless sleep, at least not at first. But then you wake up, or you think you wake up, but nothing makes any sense because if you've woken up, well, something's very wrong. You are unable to move. Everything is dark and cold, and you feel like the reason you can't move even a single muscle is because you are being pushed down by an enormous amount of water. You open your mouth to scream, and immediately it is flooded with seawater. I need you both to make me two tests. We'll do one first and then the other. So please, first, I need a fear test. Now, For fear, you choose whether you would like to do empathy or what was the other one? Logic or empathy. You may do whichever of those two you wish. Hey, you're not
2
you're not
successes.
scared this time. Okay, neither of you
I
are
get to choose one.
neither of you are terrified. Both of you are able to keep your wits about you. However, I do need you both to now make me a force test.
And I got a success.
Okay?
I'm a buff old priest.
Excellent. Who's not scared of water. No successes. Okay. So both of you, and you are both having the same experience. Not that you are aware of this at the time, but both of you are able to not panic. You don't know what is going on, but you are able to at least keep your wits about you. And as you struggle against the weight of the water, Alvon, you are able to close your mouth again. Dixon, you are not. And when you both wake up, because now you do both wake up for real this time, because now you're no longer underwater. You are in the inn. Sunlight is streaming through the windows. You are not wet at all. The bed is dry. There's no sign that you have been underwater. However, well, Alvon, you wake up, your heart pounding, confused, not panicked, but unnerved for sure. Otherwise, you are unharmed. Dixon, you wake up and your mouth is full of seawater and you are choking, and you will take a physical condition as you splutter up that water.
Okay.
And we will resume next time when you get to have a fun discussion about what happened there.
Always the way with words with you. What the hell did I just?
Always the way with words with you.
This
Always
is a
one.
stronger beer than I thought.
Are you sure you didn't get the aquavit?
Exactly.
What?